let's get into our next topic. This is all about the newly reviewed sentence for a pair of teenage rapists. We want to know if their new sentence is tough enough. 0207 862 2222. Please do give us a call. You will get through. Two boys were convicted of rape in Fordingbridge in Hampshire. They've now been given 4 years detention after the Court of Appeal changed those original sentences. Now, they assaulted two girls. One was 15 and the other 14 in separate incidents in November 24 and then January last year. The boys, who were 14 at the time and cannot legally be named due to their age, were initially given what's called a Youth Rehabilitation Order, a YRO. It's a type of community sentence for children. And in May, the judge said that he would like to avoid criminalising children unnecessarily. However, those sentences were deemed insufficient yesterday in the Court of Appeal. Let's have a listen to what the Lady Chief Justice had to say.
We decided that the non-custodial sentences which were imposed by the judge on X and Y were unduly lenient. Had X and Y been adults, custodial sentences substantially in excess of 10 years would have resulted.
Which is quite stark, isn't it, when you think about it? Well, the boys will not spend all 4 years in detention. They'll now have to follow police instructions for the rest of their lives. And the third boy, who was involved in all of it, encouraging the second attack, will not have his youth rehabilitation order changed. Well, speaking to the BBC's Daniel Sanford, the mother of one of the victims, who's been named Jasmine to protect her identity, reacted to the court's decision yesterday. The mother is, of course, played by an actor in this clip.
Nothing's ever enough. Nothing will ever be enough for the trauma that Jasmine was put through. Yes, it's better, but it's not enough.
Are you happy with the 4 years detention that's now been passed?
How could any mother be happy with 4 years? Jasmine is going to live with a lifetime of trauma, and she's going to live with a lifetime sentence. So 4 years, of course it's not enough, but it's more than we had this morning. So I have to be grateful that it's more than we had this morning.
I always think the fact that cases go to the Court of Appeal and there is a difference in opinion between senior judges shows that we are in new territory. We are, in a situation where a lot of young people are seeing this proliferation of violent porn. We're going to have more incidents like this, aren't we? And is this the right approach? Is the Court of Appeal right? Or do you think the original youth rehabilitation orders were more suitable? What is the view of the panel? I'll come to you, Lynn.
I'm just so disgusted with how sexual violence against women and young girls is just not taken seriously in this country, well, across the world, to be honest. And I just think that we need to send out a firm message to young men, to men, across the world, and we're supposed to be the leaders, in democracy, in being harsh on crime, the rule of law. And, I echo everything the mother said, where 4 years, they're going to have fairly normal lives in a couple of years, where Jasmine and the other victim
have been sentenced to trauma for the rest of their lives.
Their lives. And I just think if you look at the story, many people don't, and we won't get into the story too much, but there was intention there. Now, we know with children, their minds are not developed, but children start to understand empathy from the age of 2 and then much more empathy at the age of 7. So there's so many different things in schools now. I know teachers, they regularly speak about sexual assault, harassment, and for them to do this for them to do this and then in 2024, and then again a year later, and one of the victims, their trousers were left in such a state that it looked like there was an instrument used to essentially drag the trousers off. So no, I think I'm happy that the Court of Appeal looked at this and said a custodial sentence was required, but it should be longer so they learn from this.
There is a school of thought, and we'll be speaking to a barrister about this in a moment, but there is a school of thought that actually, in the interests of public safety, rehabilitation, and to avoid reoffending, is not in favour of detention of minors for these sorts of crimes, because you can harden them, you can expose them to other more serious criminals as well, and that actually it isn't a reflection of the seriousness of the crime if you take a different approach, because they are still legally children. What do you think about that argument?
Well, this is a horrific case, there's no question. Lynn's absolutely right that there's a pandemic of male violence against girls and women. The vast majority of people, of men who perpetrate sexual violence against girls and women, face no consequences at all for the crimes they commit against girls and women. My general issue is I really resist and oppose the public pressure being brought to bear in questions of justice. It should be left to the judiciary. It shouldn't be a question of horrific cases arbitrarily selected, thrust into the spotlight, and then basically turned into a public quasi-referendum on what should happen.
Essentially,
yes.
But I mean, it's not just, arbitrary cases. This is an extraordinarily unusual case.
Just on that. Look, I mean, what the mother said there was very instructive. Nothing will ever be enough, and of course it won't be enough. It would never be enough for anyone. It won't solve. But the question of justice is to separate what people feel, understandably, and what is best. And the worry I generally have is
public outcries helped many of us. It helped the LGBTQ movement move forward and obtain justice. It helped women's rights. It's helped so many things when we have a public outcry.
No, I think there's a big difference between minorities and women struggling for their rights as a collective group and instances of individual violence.
Well,
just more generally, I just don't think the problem I have is incarceration does not solve violence, and actually what often happens, not least with younger people, is they get incarcerated and they end up coming out worse and they come out more of a threat.
That's an interesting point, but let's speak now to the barrister and then we'll come back. We can speak to Chris Dorr, who joins me. Listen, you've heard probably what the panel was saying there. Welcome to the programme. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Look, it's a really difficult issue. These are children. These are heinous crimes. They need a serious punishment that reflects that. Clearly, the Lady Chief Justice thought that the original sentence was unduly lenient. You disagree with her. Why?
I do, and I disagree with the premise of your question, which is that the whole system should be about adequate punishment and nothing else, because the system isn't about just punishment. Because as you've already heard, there is no punishment that is going to, in reality, cure the lifelong trauma or in any way appease the lifelong trauma of the victims, who should be first and foremost in the centre of our thinking about all of this. And we should be asking questions about support for victims and how much support they actually get, how much psychological and ongoing welfare support victims receive, because it is not very much and it's often extremely poor in those ways. But when we talk about children of 14, so the reality here is this: they were originally sentenced to an order that would mean they wouldn't spend time in custody, but that was because in part they had already spent time in custody at the beginning when they were arrested on remand, and then they'd spent hundreds of days on a highly restrictive curfew that monitored their movements and prevented at certain times. Well, 461 days of qualifying curfew, as I understand it, has been the figure. So that means that they will be now held in a young offenders institution, and a young offenders institution is basically a child prison. It has bars and it has, clanging gates, and it has all the same things that any other adult prison. I've been to many of them, in fact, probably most of them, the child prisons in this country. And they'll be held in there, but they'll be released in October next year. So they'll be released in 15 months because of the way that the system works in terms of crediting that time on the curfew and the crediting of the time that they spent on remand. So they're going to spend 15 months in a child prison. Now, as your last contributor just said, what happens to 14 and 15-year-olds when they go into child prison? Well, the one thing that doesn't happen is they don't become less criminogenic. They don't become less likely to commit future crimes or less likely to harm other people. They become immeasurably more likely to spend a lifetime in the criminal justice system, harming members of the public and destroying lives. And if it's the objective people want in the name of punishment, so be it. But that's the impact when you send children into prison.
But what about punishment? I understand the whole argument of rehabilitation. But when we look at the victims and their families, they still need to feel justice is being done. So what would be the alternative measure for you to say they need to be punished?
I don't agree with that as a philosophy, because the problem is that once you start saying that we're looking to get justice for the victim or their families or whatever that they believe is justice, and you start trying to achieve that, well, the only way you achieve that is either to hang them in the street or keep them in prison till they die.
But there has to be some form of repercussions for their actions. And you're saying that you don't agree with the Lady Chief Justice, but she wasn't alone in thinking this was an unduly lenient sentence. The Prime Minister, who we know was the former Director of Public Prosecutions, you had the Attorney General for the government. You also had Jess Phillips, who's worked for a long period of her career with women and victims of violence. So all of those people are wrong.
Well, they're all wrong because they're all jumping on a bandwagon. I mean, the idea that a failing Prime Minister who's on his way out, I mean, he literally announced that they were sending it to the Court of Appeal personally himself, the Prime Minister. It's a judicial decision. And it's an executive decision that should be made on judicial grounds by the Attorney
We
General,
should not-
not by politicians who have been listening to the media and listening to this commentary. The simple point is this: have your punishment, but accept that the consequence, if you punish severely, will be more crime and more victims. So
and I think that, but
scream and shout for punishment all day long, and you will end up with more criminals.
You're
and
saying
worse
no
crime.
punishment. You're saying no
But then
punishment.
I guess it
whatsoever.
really is. We need to be clear about what your starting point is, because what we're seeing here is the politicisation of justice, which is deeply problematic. You've got to start from: is your starting point to make sure that social harm, that threats to the public, is reduced as best as possible, or is it to try and satisfy a public demand for vengeance, essentially, which can never be satisfied? If you look at Norway, which have a justice system where people are sentenced for shorter sentences when they are, and incarceration is focused on rehabilitation, but fewer people are sentenced, you get less reoffending. And I just don't see what having a system based on like America, they've got much higher crime than we do. They also have a much more brutal incarceration system. It doesn't work.
Okay,
That's the problem.
let's move away from the crime then. In every area of life, there has to be a repercussion, especially when it. What is okay? If you tell children, okay, there'll be no punishment. We're going to try and make you better, but even though you rape someone, there'll be no punishment because it's not needed.
There is.
What's the punishment, Owen?
I mean, they've already been in custody for a huge amount of time.
But he's
when they're being arrested.
But the barrister is suggesting they shouldn't have ever been incarcerated. He's suggesting that there should be no punishment.
I think forcing people through a rehabilitation. I want to hear what Chris says in response to this, because if we actually
You're saying no punishment, aren't you, Chris?
We had a rehabilitation. Sorry. Go on, Chris.
I'm just being misquoted. What I said was, I don't believe that a prison sentence spent time in a prison that just looks like an adult prison for a child is a good way to reduce crime. And that's the thing.
I asked you what punishment should be then. I asked you what punishment should be, and you couldn't answer.
I already said at the beginning, I made clear, what our only goal and our only focus should be protecting the public from harm from these people.
Yeah.
And you don't protect them.
So no punishment.
Hammering for longer and longer periods in prison. That doesn't protect them.
You're not mentioning any punishment.
Put them through a rehabilitation programme.
But where's the punishment? Where's the deterrent?
Just to
say that you're going to.
I think there's a difference between we're getting mixed up here. There's only like an adult prison, or there is under compulsion putting through someone through, for example, in a rehabilitation centre.
A premise of justice is it just has to be done. It has to be seen to be done. And if you're saying that there is no repercussion other than rehabilitation, how is it being seen to be done? I do want to squeeze in some callers really quickly, and we will come back to you. Sharon is on the line from Staffordshire. Thank you for your call, Sharon. What do you think about all of this? Obviously, emotions are on high, and it's a horrendous case. Do you think that this 4-year sentence for these teenagers is harsh enough?
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, to all of you, but I'm absolutely shocked at what I'm hearing this morning from Owen and that barrister. If it was their daughter, what would they want them not to go to prison? I cannot believe what I'm hearing, that it's okay for young men to commit crimes and get away with it and nothing to be done about it.
Let's bring the lawyer back in. We've got Crystal standing by. Would you be happy for... Sharon, let's put your question then to our lawyer. Did you hear her call there?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, no.
Well, she was absolutely disgusted in her words at what you were saying.
Okay, yes,
and how would you? Can I just finish reiterating her point really quickly? She just wanted to make it personal and said, I don't know if you have a daughter, but she was saying if it was your daughter, how would you feel?
The answer is I would feel exactly the same as I feel, which is because I know that the imprisonment of 14 and 15-year-old children causes them to become dangerous to other children. I wouldn't want that to be the legacy of my daughter's experience. What I want the legacy to be is that they would be put through a process whereby they were in the community, were able to be taught the life skills and navigate themselves away from the reasons why they committed these awful crimes in the first place, so that they don't do it to someone else's daughter.
Let's hear what Sharon thinks about that.
No, I'm still absolutely appalled with that barrister. These boys will go on and commit crime after crime. This won't be the end of it, I can guarantee it.
Sharon, I understand you're angry and upset because we're talking about violence.
I'm very angry.
Yeah, well, Sharon,
I'm a woman and I've got granddaughters.
Yeah, Sharon, I'm going to try and respond as best I can. We're talking about male violence against girls and women. We're talking about children here as well. The whole thing is shocking and horrifying. I guess the issue that we're discussing, because you said they will go on to offend over and over again, the evidence shows that if you put children in adult-style prisons, they are more likely, when they are released, to commit more crimes. So if your starting point, because you just said quite rightly, you fear that they will go on to commit more crimes. But the starting point of both me and Chris Dorr, who's an actual barrister who knows far better than me what he's talking about, is he thinks, based on the evidence, that if you put a child in a prison, they will be far, far more likely to go on to commit crimes against other people, including women. So the question is, what's your starting point?
Owen,
What's your starting point?
Can I just say something, please, Owen? Please, can I just say something, Owen? Owen, no. These boys know exactly what they were doing. We keep going on about children don't know this, they don't know that. Yes, they do. They know what they're doing.
Sharon, we're talking at cross purposes.
Yeah, I just
we're
want to...
talking at cross purposes, Sharon. I'm asking you, do you accept that statistically the evidence shows that when children are put into prisons, they are far more likely to commit offences when they're released?
Would you be happy, Sharon, with the alternative, which this is what the anti-detention centre argument is, that no custody does not mean no punishment. It includes curfews, tagging, internet restrictions, sex offender treatment, education, psychological work, victim awareness programmes and strict supervision. Would that make you happier? Or would you just want them behind bars?
Make me happier. No. They need to be sent to prison. They've committed an heinous crime.
For how long, Sharon? For how long? For how long?
You know what? I wouldn't mind if it was double, 14, 15 years. I would not mind.
And then what happens when they come out? What happens then?
Well, you know what? The public would feel a lot safer than being locked away.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, there are people who have posed serious risk to people in this country, often people who've had very difficult and traumatic experiences when they're younger. Their parents have often abused them. The question is, how do we stop them committing harm on the basis you can't just lock up everyone forever?
Well, you could argue that all prisons have a high reoffending rate and therefore prisons don't work as a concept.
That's why we need rehabilitation centres and programmes, but also
what
we're talking about is putting these children under lifelong supervision. Their lives are not going to be the lives of anybody else.
There's so much to talk about on this, and actually the dashboard's going crazy with calls. So we're going to actually extend this and continue talking about it after the break, because we've had so many of your calls on this. So what do you think? 4 years detention for 2 teenage rapists. Is it long enough or not long, far too long? 0207 862 2222, that's the number. If you've already, if you're on the line, do stay there and we will try and make sure we put you through after this. Before the break, we asked what is unique about the tennis balls at Wimbledon, and the answer is they keep them in refrigerators. It's all about gas molecules, obviously. They have to be meticulously controlled at 20 degrees because the gas molecules inside the balls expand in the heat or shrink in the cold, which means they are inconsistent, which is why I'm obviously terrible at tennis. I don't have chilled balls. Moving swiftly on. Welcome back. Owen and Lynn are in the studio with me. A little bit later on is the papers and everything else that we need to talk about, including whether people should get vouchers for upping their step count. But now we're taking more of your calls on a story that seems to have really resonated with you at home. We're talking about the 2 teenage rapists who have had their sentences increased by the Court of Appeal yesterday. What do you think about this? Should they have got longer than 4 years detention? 0207 862 2222 is the number. Mary is on the line. She's in London. Mary, welcome to the programme. Your thoughts, please.
Oh, good morning to you.
Hello.
I'm absolutely livid. I have a daughter and young granddaughters, and the fact that everyone on your panel keeps to be talking about these poor young men.
No one said that. No one said that.
Somebody please talk about the young women.
We did.
How are they going to live their life from now on? How are they going to be looking at every man they meet on the street?
No, it's horrendous, Mary. And I don't think, to be fair, I don't think any of the panel...
Mary, just to clarify, Mary, everyone believes that what these boys did is beyond disgusting, beyond abhorrent. They've traumatised the victims, the girls, the victims of the survivors of the sexual violence perpetrated for the rest of their lives. And there will be nothing that can be done to take that trauma away. Nobody is not feeling horror. The difference on the panel that you're hearing is about how to stop that harm being inflicted on other girls and women. The view that I happen to take and the barrister happened to take is that if you put lots of children who have very have committed terrible offences in the same place for a protracted period, they are likely to come out worse and to commit other offences against girls, women, and boys and men for that matter. That's the difference. That's the difference. That's all it is.
And I want punishment.
Let's hear what Mary has to say.
Thank you very much for clarifying your opinion. My opinion is still the same. It is not enough for what they have done. In my opinion, they knew exactly what they were doing. They not just did it once, they did it more than once. So therefore, they're just going to continue. If they can come out next year, then hey, they've had a slap on the wrist. On you go, loves. Yeah. You've been traumatised yourself. You just carry on with your life. No, I'm sorry. I think the vast majority of people in this country are not going to be happy.
Yeah. Okay,
it's not mob rule. No, Justice is not mob rule, Mary.
It's not decided by majority. That's true. Mary, thank you for your call. And I think you are right. A lot of people will share that opinion. Andy's in Dorset. What do you think? Is this 4-year sentence too tough or unduly lenient still?
Yeah, hi there. Thanks for having me on. Look, I hear what Owen and the barrister are saying in regards to not criminalising young people, so they get, putting them into the prison system. However, this is a unique thing. Yeah, this wasn't shoplifting. This wasn't a little fight in the park or something like that. This was a really serious offence. This kind of offence takes planning as well. They didn't do it once; they did it twice. Okay, and in cases like this, the deterrent, I believe, would be a longer sentence with a lifetime register on the sex offenders list or register. Okay, it should be 10 years minimum. This wasn't, and that would be a deterrent in itself. You're sending a clear message saying if this kind of thing happens, your whole life will be in tatters. Because these 2 young girls that were raped, and we only know about the 2, okay, these 2 young girls, and we don't know either that the boys weren't planning more rapes, okay, or sexual assaults. The 2 young girls will be living, and I've worked with rape victims, both male and female, and they will be living with this and their families for the rest of their lives.
Andy,
and I'll say to the barrister, just quickly, just as a barrister, I've got a daughter, okay, and if she was subjected, and God forbid it ever happens, but if she was subjected to something like this, I want the legacy of that attack to be different, due justice served. Okay, so I want the offenders to actually face the actual consequences for their actions.
Thank you for that call, and an important voice, because it is the first man since we've been discussing this topic to take that view, and we are obviously talking about women who are the victims in this, so appreciate your call. Cal, let's hear what Cal has to say on the line from London. Where do you stand on this debate, Cal?
Basically, I think you listen to the arguments put forward by all your guests so far. Morning, everybody. My view is the 15-month sentence isn't long enough. I mean, for a 4-year sentence, out of 15 months is not going to be long enough in my view. But then there's a bigger question here in reality as well. Should the ethnicity and the religion of the convicts be released to the public? Should they be deported, as it was being requested for the grooming gang boss from Rochdale?
Here we go. You have no idea whatsoever, obviously, about the ethnicity or otherwise.
None.
And what we know in this country is the vast majority of sexual violence, statistically, is perpetrated by white boys and white men. And I resent the fact that people who clearly don't care about sexual violence at all only care about it when they think the person might be of an ethnicity where they can get their racist hobby horse out and start going after people because they're Muslim or black or whatever. If you don't care about sexual violence, unless it's perpetrated by an ethnicity you don't like, you don't care about sexual violence.
Well said.
OK, let's move on to John, who's on the line from London. Hello, John. What do you think about all of this? Do you think 4 years is unduly lenient?
I think 4 years is ridiculous. I think a minimum of 10 years needs to be handed out.
They're kids, though, John. They're kids would be the argument.
Examples need to be made, and judges for so long now have been too lenient on these so-called young boys. As regards your panel, I disagree completely with everything Owen says. He lives in the clouds, that guy. But
John, you know what? I might live in the clouds, as you put it. But again, You've got to engage what the evidence shows, and the evidence shows that when children are incarcerated, they're more likely to commit offences. If you think that's a price worth paying, if you think that's a price worth paying, then say it. Then say it.
Like the sound of your own voice.
Yeah, well, John, answer the question.
If a judge comes along and he gives a sentence, that is the way the sentence should be. You just like to hear the sound of your own.
No, John.
voice.
I like to hear you actually answering what I just.
Public for a change.
John, you've commented. You obviously had your grudge before. You had your grudge before you came on, and when I've got my chance to go and tell Owen Jones and all the rest of it. But I'm asking you, John.
Prison, give them 10 years. John, set some examples, and move on.
John, could you just answer the question?
All right, guys.
Do you accept that people are more likely, children, to go on and commit offences if they're sent to prison? And what are you going to do about that? Is that a price worth paying? That's all I want you to answer.
If you put your head above the parapet wall and you commit a serious crime, you've got to suffer the consequences.
You're not answering the question.
Okay.
Not answering the question, not interested in the question.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much, John, for your call. After the break, it is the papers and everything else, including...